Hi, welcome to the DRH show where I have wide-ranging conversations with interesting people. We talk about all things psychology, mental health, and wellness. This time, I want to feature some of the people behind City Voices. It's an organization based in New York that aims to empower peers to live full and active lives by providing information, resources, and a means to participate in the community. So, joining me today is Danfrey, Laura Caputo, and also Stanya Court, right? It's a pleasure to have you all of you here. I've known Dan Frey for quite some time, but for the benefits of those who haven't come across Dan Frey and also the kind of work that you do. So, Dan, if you could just give us a sort of a background, your trajectory in life, and how you ended up doing what you're doing, and then after that, we'll hear from Laura and also from Stanya. So. Let's hear it from Dan Frey.
Okay, I'm going to be as brief as possible because it's been my experience that my personal story puts people in comas. So, to be very brief, I came down with a serious mental illness in 1998. And then in 1999, I was connected with a mental health advocate who also suffered from the same mental illness I was diagnosed with. So he became my mentor. And he started something called City Voices, which was a newspaper at the time. And then he died. He just up and died. 2 years. I mean, it's not funny. It's serious. I love the guy. But after 2 years, he died. He was in very bad health, very, very bad shape. His name was Ken Steele, Steele. Google it. The day the voices stopped, Google it. So after he died, he mentored me, so I took over City Voices. And fast forward to COVID. That's from 2000 to COVID. So yeah, a lot happened in the 20 years, but I don't want to bore you to tears. So when COVID happened, we went virtual with everything. No more print newspapers. We went virtual, and COVID was like 2019, 2020, and we started. We put everything on a website, and we started social media, and um, and still we did meet in person a little bit. Like we called it a PIP, peers in person. A peer is someone with a serious mental health or addiction challenge. A peer, you have something in common with it. So we're all about peer support. So we still met in person, like during the summer of 2020, 2021, for these PIPs, peers in person events. Like, like 8 to 9 of us or 4 of us or whatever would get together and meet in like Central Park in New York City. So the PIPs are in New York City, but everything else is virtual. And I guess anyone around the world who we only have like the English language barrier that is the barrier from reaching people beyond who do not speak English. And we also started the Friendship Squad, which actually Laura and Stanya are both volunteer friends with the Friendship Squad. And the idea behind the Friendship Squad is to pair people with mental health and addiction challenges who are secure in their recovery, like Laura and Stanya, with their peers who also have these challenges who may be struggling. And the idea is to build friendships that last and stand the test of time. So that's all about City Voices and the Friendship Squad and peers in person. And let's keep this going.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. And it's really interesting your trajectory that you've shared to us because like where you said there's a guy who like influenced you and helped you when you were experiencing mental health issues, and now you're that person who's actually making a difference in people's lives. Now, so let's hear it from Stanya. How did you start about with your work with City Voices?
Well, I found them online. I found their website, and I was really interested in connecting with other peers. So I went ahead and emailed, I believe, Dan, and we got in contact with each other. And that's when I started doing the peer support for other peers.
Thank you, Stanya. Now let's hear it from Laura. I understand you're having some connectivity issue, but thank you for taking the time to join us today. So, Laura, tell us your journey. How did you begin with City Voices? Okay, we'll go back from Laura, but I suppose since Laura cannot share her journey, just Dan, just give us a brief overview of what Laura is doing in terms of peer support with City Voices. Is she part of the core committee if you have one?
I don't know about committee, but Laura works in an emergency room in a hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Where she provides like peer support.
Mm-hmm.
She connects to people on like a human level who may be coming to the ER with like addiction issues or like attempted suicide or almost overdosed. And she connects with them on a human level because she's been there. She's been through all that hell. She's experienced it herself. So she's able to really develop a trust with the patients there. And she does the same thing for City Voices, for the Friendship Squad. She has been connected with someone who is experiencing addiction challenges, and she was a friend to them for a few months before that person dropped out. People come in and out of the Friendship Squad. Some people drop out because so many reasons, and relapse is also a good reason. But she's I don't know what can I say about Laura.
Probably Laura can carry on sharing her story. And thank you, by the way, Laura, for joining us in spite of your busy schedule.
No problem. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we were just Laura. Dan is just giving us a quick kind of whistle tour of what you're doing with City Voices. But tell us about your background, Laura, if you will.
Okay. I have never been in this field before. I have been a certified addiction recovery peer for 5 years. I had worked my first 2.5 in a recovery center. I wanted to pursue this field. The best thing that ever happened to me was being, I received a dual diagnosis after an overdose attempt. And it was the best thing that happened to me because I was able to deal with not only my mental health crisis, but also let me work on the addiction part of it as well. And, if it wasn't for my mental health care, I wouldn't be here today. And so now, I talk to people about my experience and how important the lack of substance and getting mental health care can improve their lives. And I live it, I support it, I get to work doing what I love.
Absolutely. And as like what you've said, Stanya, Dan, and Laura, you all have your own set of lived experiences that kind of prompted you to become part of the peer community. But I suppose what I want to hear from all of you is that how do you think your role helps in spreading peer community? What I'm trying to say is that does it really help address the stigma, especially for those people who might not have experienced mental health? We don't have a lived experience of mental health issues. What about you, Tanya? How does your role help in spreading awareness, not just within the peer community, but beyond the peer community?
Well, I think just the whole idea of peer support and has been, an evolution, and I think people are starting to embrace it and realize that it really works. Lived experience does work.
Mhm, mhm. Now, thank you, Stanya. Dan, would you like to give us a different slant on what Stanya has, shared to us when it comes to the role of peer community when it comes to spreading awareness?
Okay, well, I'd like to say that she's right. I mean, peer support is something that is being recognized by the community of caring mental health professionals, that it's an important, effective thing. But it doesn't all have to be done in clinical settings. I mean, we're doing our own thing, really. And to address the stigma issue, well, there's a lot of different kinds of stigma. Well, a few. But the one I think you're thinking about is like, how do we convince society that people with mental illness aren't crazy lunatics and are actually like here to help? Or actually here to be your friend and to contribute or whatever. So I'm not sure how to do that, but I think just by living your life and providing peer support, because anyone can get a mental illness. When if Bezos, the Amazon guy, gets a mental illness, he's gonna spend his money and exercise on all these different modalities, if he ever gets a mental illness, to try to treat himself. But he might just discover, oh my God, all this is not working despite all my billions of dollars, and I'm just going to try peer support because he feels really alone and isolated and disconnected, and no one understands him, but except for his peers, so wow, yeah. So that's stigma from outside of your body, but within your body there's also stigma. It's called self stigma, and that's the kind of stigma where you experience the symptoms, and it can be pretty bad, and you can almost die sometimes. But then you get into treatment, and you're like, and treatment is supposed to like help you get your life back together, but it gives you a kind of life, but the kind of life that also comes with a label. And the label is sometimes even more damaging than the symptoms themselves, because like labels like schizophrenic or manic depressive or whatever, or like borderline, all these labels are like, oh my God, I'm damaged goods. And self stigma is considering yourself to be damaged and in need of help from a source to repair you. But in reality, no, in reality, everybody's damaged because everybody's a trauma survivor, and trauma damages. But in reality, we're also healers, and healing. What peer support does is it helps peers and whoever else wants to engage in it to heal oneself with the support of others. And especially to heal and to regain the confidence you lost after receiving a label.
Absolutely. And just to follow up on that topic, I just want to ask Laura, because you work within the clinical setting, within the healthcare setting. So it's kind of, different orientation, different modality when it comes to the clinical setting. So I was wondering, do you hear a lot of criticism or a lot of skepticism when it comes to peer community? People saying that it's very unlikely that it will work for people who are experiencing mental health issues. They're better off, seeing a psychiatrist or a clinician. Do you get that a lot? And if so, how do you address those skepticisms, criticisms, if you will?
So just to let you know, I am in no way, shape, or form clinical. My certification is as a certified recovery peer advocate, which focuses on the addiction side of it. Addressing that as a peer, sharing lived experience with my peers, that people that come into the emergency room and need detox or treatment or support. And so much of what I do really is surrounded by how well we create a bond during that initial experience. I mean, I think that's universal. And then during that process, I do work with I work with the medical team and also social workers to connect people to not only a detox, rehab, and then an outpatient program. But then our outpatient program not only addresses the chemical dependency, but we're attached to an adult outpatient program, which has psychiatry, a full psychiatry services and everything. So it's really about closing that circle. And I'm very active in the peer community, the addiction peer community. I'm trying to get my CPS certification, but I have had nothing but positive experiences with my peer community.
Absolutely. And another thing that I want to hear from you as peer community members is that, is it necessary for you to have a live experience, or can you actually be a member of, the peer community without necessarily going through those, challenging experiences such as trauma and adversity? Stanya, what do you think?
Well, I think everybody's suffered some sort of trauma, and as long as you can have some empathy and willingness to really listen and understand and have an open heart, I think you can offer support. I mean, there's all different kinds of support that can be offered from a whole range of people. And I think it all, helps.
Absolutely. And Dan, do you have any members of the peer community? Sorry.
I'm
Do
sorry.
you want to add on to that?
I do, and I agree with everything that you're saying. And I also would like to add, only because of my own family, that it's not necessary to have that lived mental health experience, although it is helpful to be a peer. But your life needs to have been severely affected by it, or that you have such a strong feeling to support it in order to be a peer within, I believe, either community. It's just, and that desire, but to help other people and share feelings and successes.
Absolutely. And like what Tanya and Laura said, that it's really important that you have a sense of empathy. And I think that sense of empathy would come from if you've experienced it yourself. You know how it is to experience stigma in relation to mental health. But what I want to hear from Dan, because he's actively involved with City Voices, is that can you give me like a rough percentage of people who are experiencing, who don't have necessarily lived experience of mental health issues, but they're part of City Voices, or most of you actually have lived experience?
Most everyone who's been volunteering or supporting, whether it's like in any way, City Voices or the Friendship Squad, are people with lived experience. But we had a family member, a mother of a child who had mental illness, be a part of our group for a while. And family members can be great allies. I mean, there's an organization in America called the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and they're a very powerful like lobbying and advocacy group. They have like hundreds of thousands of members, mostly concerned family members. Hold on. Okay. So so I would like to encourage more family members to be involved with us, and then there's other allies. There's clinicians. There's researchers who are involved with City Voices who don't necessarily identify as being mentally ill or addicted or whatever. There's also anyone can be an ally. An ally is just someone who sympathizes, who have, and it would, like Laura says, it helps if they have had experience with traumatic events in their life. They just need to have a heart. They need to have experience some love and some compassion, and I think they can understand the plight of a marginalized community like ours.
Absolutely. And Stanya, could you share to me some of your experiences as a member of the peer community? What exactly are you doing? Some specific examples to help those people.
Well, I do have two friends that I speak to periodically, weekly. One I text very often, and the other one we speak on the phone, and we just offer general support to each other. It's reciprocal. And, sometimes I call and maybe he's feeling a little down and we cheer each other up a little bit, or we're just somebody to talk to and just have a connection with.
Absolutely. So, would you like to address that, Dan? What do you think are the challenges within the peer community?
Oh, within the community, I guess there's the simple challenge of like when a peer, this called peer-driven nonprofits, peer-driven enterprise, that exists to provide peer support for other peers, to do peer stuff. So maybe it could even be housing of people with mental illness or addiction or whatever. But the organization that runs the housing program and runs the advocacy programs are the organization from the top to the bottom is run by people with lived experience, and these organizations exist. There's a big one in New York that employs like 100 people with mental illness from top to bottom, and it's called Baltic Street. And but the challenge, like with anything that when it starts off small, it's more pure. There's more control over the purity of the service and the connection and the attention to alleviate suffering and to provide real, genuine peer support. But the challenges are, like when in growing, an organization acquires more money, and money tends to overshadow focus on the quality of the peer service. Mm-hmm. And so I find that a number of organizations that have grown tremendously have are more focused on acquiring more wealth than they are in providing service that is not just superb quality, and superb quality means it just has that element of love and compassion that hasn't been tarnished. So that's a challenge. Money corrupts, right? That's a challenge for peers. That's a challenge for everybody, for all nonprofits. Another challenge. What's another challenge for peer? Well, stigma is of course a challenge because when society views you as just deranged and crazy and dangerous, it's hard to be taken seriously. It's hard to be supported by the society you live in. So those are some of the challenges, and I'll keep thinking about this question.
Yeah, thank you. Laura, if at any point you can hear us, your connectivity issue has been settled, just feel free to jump in. I want to hear from Astanya, because we talk about the peer community, we talk about these challenges, and it's an interesting point from Danfrey. You mentioned about the purity of the services. But Astanya, what are your hopes for the peer community?
As far as what?
In generic terms.
Well, just that we all, connect and, have a sense of community and, have someone to turn to when we need to talk.
And Danfrey, you mentioned something about Friendship Squad. For the benefit of those who haven't come across Friendship Squad, tell us more about this and how does it link with City Voices?
Okay, well, the only link between the Friendship Squad and City Voices is that that I'm involved with it, really. And that it provides peer support. It's a peer-driven, peer-focused thing. And the Friendship Squad is a non-clinical peer intervention, non-clinical intervention run by peers, to provide peer support. Peer support is just it's a complicated concept because everyone has their own ideas what it means. But to me, peer support just means, love and compassion towards someone who has had similar experiences of suffering. And so the Friendship Squad pairs people. One person who's the volunteer is more secure in their recovery than the person receiving the friendship. The friend, but yet they both benefit because they often I hear from people who form friendships through the Friendship Squad is that they're learning so much. There's been like one or two friendships that have been like life-changing for participants, and we've had 30 people in and out of the Friendship Squad, and I would say like 4 or 5 relationships that lasted these 6 to 9 months since we started, and other relationships that have, they hit bumps, and it's my job as the project, the volunteer coordinator to make sure that I arbitrate any disputes or disagreements or anything, help them to resolve issues and so forth, and to keep the friendship going, because it's about building something, and you got to start with a good foundation.
What I want to hear from Stanya is that a lot of people who are watching this is because they're interested to be part of the peer community, but for some reason they might be hesitant. So what's your advice for those who kind of like, thinking whether they should be involved with this?
Oh, this is wonderful. You get a great sense of satisfaction out of it. It's good. It's just a good thing to do. And if you want to volunteer doing anything, this is the thing to do. It's very rewarding, and it's great.
Okay, thank you, Stanya. Okay, but do you have any upcoming projects for City Voices that perhaps you want to share to some of the audience?
Well, we're always I'm looking for a volunteer coordinator to supervise the volunteers and connect the volunteers to friends in the behavioral health community. That means addiction and mental health challenges. And I would be very happy to train such a person who's willing to coordinate, because the idea is growth would mean more volunteer coordinators, which would mean more volunteer friends, which would mean more friends of the volunteers. And then more volunteer coordinators could mean more friends and more and it could grow that way, I guess. I don't know. It's an experiment.
Okay. And finally, my question for all of you, we'll start first with Stanya. What's your memorable experience of being part of the peer community? We'll hear it from Stanya. What's the highlight of you being part of the peer community?
Oh, it's you have a sense of belonging to something. I mean, it's a wonderful experience.
And what about you, Laura? Also, if you wanna at some point just add on to what we already talked about earlier, we talk about the challenges and your hopes for the peer community. But we're now talking about what are the highlights of being part of the peer community. Laura? Okay. So, moving swiftly on. So, Danfrey, what would you say are the highlights of you being part of City Voices?
The fact that I have so much support in my life from the peer community that, well, it just makes life so much more interesting and easier to live and deal with life's challenges like death and loss and sickness and illness.
More manageable. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for sharing to us the highlights of you being part of City Voices, Dan and Stanya. And finally, if people wanted to reach out to you, what platforms can they get in touch with you at, Stanya?
Stanya100@gmail.com.
Okay, thank you. And Dan?
Admin@cityvoicesonline.org And
Okay.
you can also just put cityvoicesonline.org into a search and you'll come to our website.
Okay, yes. So I'll pop your contact details in the description also for anyone who wants to hear more about your experience of working with City Voices or just about being part of the peer community in general. They can get in touch with you directly. And of course, you've all written some interesting pieces on City Voices, and your website has all these wonderful resources when it comes to peer community and when it comes to experience of live experience of mental health. Danfrey, Stanya Courtright, and also Laura Caputo, in spite of your busy schedule and in spite of your connectivity issue, thank you for taking the time to join us today. Well, it's a pleasure having you here on the DRHO, but unfortunately, we ran out of time. And I look forward to hearing more about your work at City Voices. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you so much. Thanks again. Bye-bye.